So when my 6-year-old son Ethan looked up at me one morning and said, "Mom, I think Lily is stealing your happy," I smiled without thinking. "Sweetheart," I said, tying his shoelaces, "no one can steal happiness." He didn't smile back. Ethan wasn't dramatic. He wasn't the kind of kid who made things up. He barely lied about broken toys. That's why his silence bothered me more than his words. Lily had been our babysitter for 3 months. College student, calm voice, always early, always polite. She helped Ethan with homework. She cooked simple meals. She laughed at my bad jokes. On paper, she was perfect. But that morning, as I grabbed my bag and kissed Ethan his forehead, he held my wrist a second longer than usual. "Please don't go late today," he said. "Why?" I asked. He looked toward the living room where Lily was scrolling on her phone. "She's nicer when you're here." That sentence followed me all day. At work, I missed details. I reread emails twice. I spilled coffee on my notes. Because something about that sentence didn't fit. That evening, I came home earlier than usual. The house was quiet. Too quiet. Lily was in the kitchen, humming softly. Ethan sat on the couch, staring at the TV without blinking. "How was your day?" I asked. Lily turned, smiling. "Great, as always." Ethan didn't answer. Later that night, after Lily left, I found Ethan sitting on his bed, hugging his pillow. "Talk to me," I said softly. He hesitated. "I don't like how she talks when you're gone." "How does she talk?" He searched for words a 6-year-old shouldn't have to find. "She tells me you're tired because of me. She says you smile more at work than at home. She says moms stop being happy when kids grow up." My chest tightened. "Did she say that exactly?" He nodded. I stayed calm. I didn't want fear to grow between us. But that night I didn't sleep. Because when I thought back, I had been smiling less. I'd been feeling drained for no clear reason. Small doubts had crept in lately. Had they always been mine? The next day I watched more carefully. Lily never raised her voice. She never broke rules. But she spoke softly, carefully, like she was planting ideas, not commands. By the end of the week, Ethan barely laughed. That's when I knew. Whatever Lily was doing, it wasn't visible. It was quiet, personal, and aimed straight at my bond with my son, and I was done ignoring it. The next morning, I didn't rush. I pretended everything was normal, but I slowed down just enough to notice what I'd been missing. Lily arrived at 3:30 p.m. on the dot, like always. Same soft smile, same gentle tone, same neat ponytail. Nothing about her looked suspicious. If anything, she looked like the kind of person people trusted instantly. That's what made it harder. I didn't tell Ethan I was watching. Kids sense that pressure, and I needed him relaxed, honest, himself. Instead, I stayed in the kitchen longer than usual, pretending to check emails while listening. Lily knelt beside Ethan with his homework. "You're doing great, but don't stress. Your mom already worries enough." I paused. Ethan looked up. "Does she?" Lily smiled kindly. "Of course. Moms worry all the time, especially single moms." Single. She used it like a fact that carried weight. I walked into the living room. "Hey, Lily, I'll be in my room if you need anything." "Of course," she replied, sweet as ever. After Lily left, Ethan asked a question he'd never asked before. "Are you sad because Dad left?" I froze. "I'm sad sometimes," I said carefully, "but not because of you." He nodded, but his eyes didn't fully believe me. Then I understood what stealing my happy really meant. It wasn't about money. It wasn't about time. It was about rewriting the story inside my child's head. Over the next few days, I kept notes. Not dramatic ones, just patterns. Day 1, Ethan asked if I liked my job more than him. Day 2, he asked why I laughed on phone calls but not at dinner. Day 3, he asked if kids make moms tired forever. None of these ideas came from nowhere. They were seeds, and someone was planting them carefully. I decided to test something. Friday, I came home an hour early without telling Lily. I didn't rush in. I unlocked the door quietly. I heard Lily's voice before I saw her. "You know," she said calmly, "some moms don't mean to change. Life just takes happiness away." Ethan was quiet. "She still loves you," Lily continued, "but love feels different when adults are disappointed." That was it. No yelling, no rules broken, just a slow erosion of trust. I stepped into the room. Lily turned, surprised but composed. "Oh, you're early." Ethan's face lit up with relief. "I just finished early," I said, watching her closely. "Everything okay?" "Always," she replied, too smooth. That night, I sat alone and replayed everything. Why would a babysitter do this? She wasn't asking for more money. She wasn't isolating me from me physically. She was reshaping my emotions. And then it hit me. People don't always want control over homes. Sometimes they want control over importance. The next day, I called a friend who worked in child psychology. I explained everything without naming Lily. She paused before speaking. "That's emotional positioning," she said. "It's subtle, not illegal, but dangerous." "Why would someone do that?" I asked. "Some people need to feel central," she replied. "They replace trust slowly, especially with children." That word echoed in my mind. Replace. I decided to look deeper into Lily's background, not aggressively, quietly. What I found wasn't criminal, but it wasn't comforting either. She'd switched families often, never stayed longer than 4 months, always left on good terms. No complaints, no praise, just absence. That night, Ethan hugged me tighter than usual. "Mom?" he whispered. "Yeah, baby? You're happier today." I smiled through the lump in my throat. "I am. Because now I knew. And once you see something clearly, it loses power. But Lily didn't know I was watching yet, and that made all the difference. I didn't confront Lily. Not yet. People like her don't respond well to direct questions. They adjust. They deflect. They become better at hiding. If I wanted the truth, I had to let her believe nothing had changed. I smiled more. I laughed louder at dinner. I hugged Ethan longer before bed. I talked about my day like I used to. I watched. "You're so much lighter," she said one afternoon while handing Ethan a snack. "I feel lighter," I replied, meeting her eyes. Something flickered there, just for a second. Not anger, not fear. Ethan surprised me. "Mom," he said softly, "Lily says you're acting happy because you're afraid to be lonely." I kept my face calm. "What do you think?" I asked. Ethan thought for a moment. "I think you're happy because you choose to be." I hugged him. I wrote down everything. Exact words, times, tone. A pattern emerged. Lily never insulted me directly. She never raised doubts loudly. She framed everything as concern. She positioned herself as the one who understood. I started paying attention to her stories. They had the same theme. A mom who was overwhelmed, a kid who felt unseen, an adult who stepped in to help. Lily told Ethan about a family she used to babysit for. "The mom worked a lot," Lily said casually. "She didn't notice how sad her son was." Ethan felt uncomfortable. "But I notice you," Lily added quickly. "That's why I'm here." In that moment, I felt something cold settle in my gut. She was competing. It was time to set a boundary, a soft one. "Lily," I said later, "I really appreciate you, but I'd like you to focus more on schoolwork and play. Emotional stuff can get confusing for kids." Lily's smile tightened. "Of course," she said. "I just care." That night, Ethan had trouble sleeping. "Lily was quiet today," he said. "Not mad, just quiet." That silence was louder than words. The next week, small things started going missing. Not valuables. My favorite mug moved, photos slightly rearranged, music playlists changed on the tablet. Intentional. It felt like someone was slowly editing my life. I checked the nanny cam in the living room. I'd installed it months ago for safety and forgotten about it. What I saw shocked me. Lily sat beside Ethan, whispering. "Your mom doesn't need to know everything," Lily said gently. "Some things are just ours." Ethan nodded. "Mom tells me everything." Lily smiled. "Not everything." That was enough. Not for a confrontation, for preparation. I scheduled a meeting with Lily's previous employer. She agreed to coffee. She looked tired. Lily was nice, the woman said slowly, helpful, but my daughter became distant, confused. "Did Lily do anything wrong?" I asked. She said, "She made herself feel necessary." That phrase hit hard. That night, I sat with Ethan. "Has Lily ever told you to keep secrets?" I asked gently. He hesitated. "She says some feelings don't need to bother you." I took a deep breath. "No adult should ever ask you to hold feelings alone," I said. He nodded, relieved. It was then. It wasn't about babysitting. It was about boundaries. And Lily was about to learn where mine were. I changed one thing. Not Lily's schedule, not my tone. I changed access. I stopped leaving the house immediately after she arrived. I stayed, cooked, folded laundry, made myself present without hovering. Lily adjusted her behavior instantly. She spoke less to Ethan when I was around. She smiled more at me. She became invisible. But the moment I stepped out of the room, the atmosphere shifted. I tested it. I went to my bedroom and cracked the door open. "I think your mom is trying really hard," Lily said softly. "Sometimes people try so hard because they're afraid." Ethan didn't answer. "She doesn't want you to worry. That's why I'm here." I stepped back before I heard more. That night, I didn't cry. I planned. I made a list of rules, clear, simple, professional. No emotional conversations without me. No comparisons. No private bonding language. The next day, I sat Lily down. "I need to be clear about boundaries," I said calmly. "Ethan is sensitive. I want all emotional guidance to come from me." Her smile faded, just slightly. "I understand," she said. "I'd never want to overstep." But her voice was colder. Over the next few days, Ethan became quieter again. Not sad, watchful. That worried me more. One evening, he whispered, "She says you don't trust her anymore." "I trust you," I replied. That was the crack. Mom wasn't upset about rules. She was upset about losing influence. I reviewed more nanny cam footage. Mom wasn't saying much now, but she sighed often. She looked tired. She let silence do the work. That silence made Ethan uneasy. I realized something important. Emotional control doesn't always look like action. Sometimes it looks like withdrawal. I called my friend again. "She's pulling back to make the child feel responsible," she said. "It creates guilt." Enough. I decided it was time to end this professionally. I gave Lily 1 week's notice, polite, respectful. She nodded. Of course. No argument, just calm. That weekend, Ethan asked something that chilled me. "Mom, will you be sad when she leaves?" "I'll be okay," I said. "Why?" "Because she says people leave when they're not needed anymore." I held him close. "No one leaves because you don't need them," I said. "People leave because seasons change." He smiled weakly. On Lily's second to last day, she handed Ethan a small notebook. "For your thoughts," she said. I took it before Ethan could. "That's not necessary," I said firmly. Lily's eyes met mine. Something unreadable passed between us. I read the first page. It said, "The people who care most stay quiet." The notebook was no longer subtle, and Lily knew her time was running out, which meant the last move wouldn't be gentle. The last week felt heavier than all the months before it. Not because Lily did something obvious, because she did almost nothing at all. She followed the rules, she stayed quiet, she smiled when required, and that silence pressed on Ethan like a weight he didn't know how to name. Children feel shifts adults underestimate. When attention is slowly removed, they assume it's their fault. I saw it in the way Ethan hesitated before speaking, in how he checked Lily's face before laughing, and how he watched me, as if measuring which version of me would stay. That's when I understood the real damage. It wasn't the words Lily had said, it was the emotional debt she'd created. I decided to counter it, gently but clearly. Every night, I started a new routine. High and low, I told Ethan. Tell me the best part of your day and the hardest part. The first night, he struggled. The best part was when you came home early, he said. The hardest part, I don't know. That's okay, I said. We don't force feelings. The next night, he opened up more. Lily doesn't talk much now, he said quietly. How does that make you feel? He thought. Like I did something wrong. I shook my head. Other people's silence is never your responsibility. He leaned into me. Meanwhile, Lily watched. I could feel it. She saw the connection returning and it unsettled her. On Wednesday, she broke her silence. I think Ethan is becoming very dependent on you, she said carefully. I looked at her, calm and steady. That's called parenting, I replied. Her lips pressed together. That afternoon, I checked the nanny cam again. Lily sat on the couch staring at nothing. Ethan played on the floor. After a long pause, she spoke. You know, she said, not looking at him, people don't always choose who stays in their lives. Ethan froze. And sometimes, she added softly, when adults leave, it's because they're tired of pretending. I stepped into the room immediately. That's enough, I said. She turned, startled. I was just talking generally, she said. No, I replied. You were planting ideas again. Her mask slipped for the first time. I never said anything bad about you, she quickly said. You didn't have to, I answered. You let him imagine it. Silence filled the room. Ethan looked between us, confused and tense. Lily, I said, lowering my voice, today will be your last day. She stood slowly. I was only trying to help, she said. Help who? I asked. She didn't answer. She packed her bag without another word. At the door, she turned to Ethan. You're very sensitive, she said softly. Don't lose that. I stepped between them. He won't, I said, because he's safe. After she left, the house felt lighter, not quiet, peaceful. That night, Ethan slept deeply for the first time in weeks. Before bed, Ethan asked, Mom, was she stealing your happy? I smiled, brushing his hair back. No, I said. She was borrowing it without asking. And you took it back? I did, I said, with interest. He laughed, and that laugh told me everything. The next morning, sunlight filled the kitchen like it hadn't in a long time. But I knew the story wasn't over yet. Because people like Lily don't disappear quietly. They leave echoes. And I was about to make sure those echoes didn't stay. I thought peace would arrive all at once. Instead, it came in pieces. The first few days after Lily left felt almost too calm. No tension, no second-guessing, just quiet routines slowly settling back into place. But emotional echoes don't leave when the person does. They linger. Ethan woke up one morning and asked, Who's picking me up today? I am, I said, smiling. He nodded, but his eyes searched my face like he needed confirmation. At breakfast, he hesitated before laughing at a silly joke. That hesitation broke my heart. So I shifted focus. Not on what Lily had done, but on rebuilding what she'd disrupted. We made a rule. No unspoken worries. If something felt confusing, we said it out loud. One afternoon, Ethan surprised me. She used to say feelings get heavy if you share them too much, he admitted. I knelt beside him. Feelings get lighter when they're shared with safe people. He thought about that. Are you a safe person? I said, always. That night, I found something unexpected. The notebook Lily had tried to give Ethan. I'd put it away and forgotten about it. I opened it again, this time slowly. The first page still said, "Sometimes the people who care most stay quiet." But the next pages were empty. It wasn't a diary, it was an invitation, a space meant to be filled with thoughts she hoped would drift away from me. I closed it and put it in the trash. Some things don't need analysis, they need removal. A week later, I received an email from Lily. Short, polite. She said she hoped Ethan was well, that she'd enjoyed her time with us, that she wished us happiness. No apology, no explanation, just distance wrapped in kindness. I didn't reply. That night, Ethan asked something new. "Mom, why do some people need to be needed so much?" I chose my words carefully. "Because they don't know how to feel important on their own," I said. He nodded. "That sounds lonely." I agreed. Days passed. Laughter came back in waves. One evening, Ethan ran into the kitchen, smiling wide. "Guess what?" he said. "I didn't feel worried today." I smiled. That's a good feeling to notice. That's when I realized something else. This experience hadn't just taught me to protect my child, it taught him to recognize emotional boundaries early, a lesson many adults never learn. Still, I stayed alert, not paranoid, aware. Trust isn't blind, it's thoughtful. 2 weeks later, I interviewed new babysitters. I asked different questions this time. How do you handle emotions? How do you involve parents? What boundaries matter to you? One candidate stood out, not because she was perfect, but because she said, "I believe parents are the emotional center. I support, not replace." That's when I knew. The echo was fading, but one last thing remained: closure. I sat Ethan down. "You didn't imagine anything," I told him. "You noticed something real." His eyes widened. "I wasn't wrong?" "No," I said. "You were brave." He smiled, proud and relieved, and in that moment I knew something had shifted forever. He trusted himself now, and I trusted us. But life has a way of testing lessons, and soon it would test this one too. I thought the hardest part was over. I was wrong. 2 weeks after Lily left, Ethan came home from school quieter than usual. Not upset, not tired, just distant. I noticed it the way mothers do, in the pause before he answered, in how he kicked off his shoes without his usual energy. "How was your day?" I asked. "Fine," he said. That word again. Later that evening, while brushing his teeth, he asked casually, "Mom, do grown-ups ever pretend?" I turned off the tap. "Pretend about what?" "About being okay." I took a breath. "Sometimes, but pretending doesn't last." He nodded, thinking. That night, he had trouble sleeping. He asked me to sit with him longer than usual. "You're not going anywhere, right?" he asked. "I'm right here," I said, "and I will be." That was the moment I realized the deeper layer of what Lily had done. Lily hadn't just planted doubts about me. She'd introduced the idea that security could disappear without warning. So the next day, I did something simple but powerful. I showed up. I volunteered at his school. I walked him to class. I stayed visible. That afternoon, his teacher pulled me aside. "He's very observant," she said gently. "He asks thoughtful questions." "What kind of questions?" I asked. "About feelings, about trust." That night, Ethan told me the truth. "There's a new helper at school," he said. "She reminds me of Lily." My chest tightened. "What reminds you?" I asked calmly. "She talks soft, and she says kids feel things adults don't notice." I nodded. "And how does that make you feel?" He thought. "Uncomfortable." I smiled. "That's your intuition," I said. "It's working." We talked about safe adults, about how care never asks for secrecy, about how care never competes. The next morning, he walked into school with more confidence. That afternoon, he ran out smiling. "She wasn't scary anymore," he said, "because I knew what to watch for." That sentence stayed with me. Knowledge doesn't remove fear, It gives it shape. That weekend, we redecorated his room. New posters, new colors, fresh light. We removed the last objects Lily had touched. Not out of anger, out of intention. That night, Ethan slept through without waking once. In the quiet, I realized something important. This wasn't just recovery, it was growth. He wasn't fragile, he was learning strength. And so was I. But stories like this don't end neatly. They settle, they wait, and sometimes they circle back when you least expect it. It happened on a Tuesday. Nothing dramatic, no warning. Just a name on my phone screen I didn't expect to see again. Lily. I let it ring. Then she left a voicemail. Her voice was the same. Calm, gentle, careful. She said she was calling to apologize if she'd ever made me uncomfortable. She said she'd been thinking a lot. She said she hoped Ethan was doing well. No excuses, no details. That unsettled me more than anger would have. I didn't play the message for Ethan. Some doors don't need reopening. But that evening, he surprised me again. "Mom," he said while coloring, "do people come back when they feel bad?" "Sometimes," I said slowly, "but feeling bad doesn't always mean it's safe." He nodded. "I don't want her to come back." "Neither do I said gently. I deleted the voicemail, not out of fear, out of clarity. A few days later, I ran into Lily at the grocery store, by chance. She smiled like old times. "You look happy," she said. "I am," I replied. She glanced down the aisle, then back at me. "I never meant to cross lines," she said quietly. I held her gaze. Intent doesn't change impact. She looked away first. That was closure. Not for her, for me. At home, Ethan asked, "Did you see her?" "Yes," I said. He watched my face. "Were you scared?" "No," I said honestly. I was sure. That's when I realized how much had shifted. I wasn't second-guessing myself anymore. Neither was he. That night, I wrote something down for myself. Trust is not about giving access. It's about recognizing alignment. The next morning, our new babysitter arrived. Warm, direct, professional. She spoke to me first, always. Ethan liked her. Not intensely, not instantly, comfortably. And that was perfect. Weeks passed. Laughter filled the house again. One night, as I tucked Ethan in, he said, "Mom?" "Yes?" "I'm glad you listened." I kissed his forehead. "Me too." Because children don't always have the words, but they always have the truth. And sometimes protecting happiness doesn't mean fighting. It means choosing who gets close and who doesn't. The house felt different now. Lighter. Louder. Safer. Ethan laughed freely while building blocks in the living room. I noticed he didn't pause, didn't check for hidden meanings in words, didn't measure smiles for hidden messages. That, I realized, was the real victory. I had underestimated how fragile trust could feel to a child when subtle manipulation creeps in. It's not loud arguments or harsh words that leave scars. It's the quiet reshaping of perception, the tiny shifts that make a child doubt love. I started documenting everything, not in paranoia, but in preparation. Notes on routines, notes on conversations, notes on moments of joy. If anyone ever asked about what happened, I would have the facts, the emotions, and the recovery all in one place. Ethan and I created new rituals, simple ones, like Sunday pancake mornings where we tried a new topping each week, and Friday bedtime stories where he chose the book and I listened more than I read. Every ritual was about reaffirming connection, about teaching him that attention and love aren't negotiable. I also started a journal for myself, not about Lily, not about the past, but about growth, about my own intuition, about noticing the subtle ways people influence your life, about learning to protect happiness. The new babysitter integrated smoothly. She respected boundaries. She didn't compete for emotional space. She supported, guided, and then stepped back. I watched her interact with Ethan and felt relief wash over me. Safe doesn't have to be dramatic, it just has to be consistent. One afternoon, as I watched Ethan drawing at the kitchen table, he said, "Mom, I like when you notice me." I smiled. "I notice you all the time." He paused. "Even when you're busy?" "Especially then," I replied. He looked satisfied. That simple sentence, the acknowledgement of presence, felt like a shield against all the past doubts, all the seeds planted by someone else. That night, as I tucked him in, he whispered, "I don't feel worried anymore." And for the first time in months, I didn't have to reassure him, because he knew. He trusted himself, and I trusted us. We had rebuilt not just routines, but the invisible walls that protect happiness. Not walls that isolate, but walls that define safe space. I realized then that Lily's influence, though troubling, had taught me something vital. Being aware is better than being blind. Being present is stronger than being passive. And protecting happiness is an act of courage, patience, and consistency. The next morning, sunlight poured through the windows, casting golden stripes across the floor. Ethan ran in, backpack bouncing, ready for school, a laugh in his voice that felt like it had returned fully to him. I paused for a moment watching him, thinking about how far we had come. It had been months since Lily left, months since subtle doubts, quiet manipulation, and whispered suggestions had shadowed our home. And yet, every challenge, every uneasy moment had taught me one critical lesson. Happiness, trust, and love are not stolen, they are protected, nurtured, and recognized. We had rebuilt our routines. Sunday pancake mornings remained sacred. Bedtime stories were no longer just about reading, they were about connecting, laughing, and sharing. Our walls, our home, were once again a place where joy could grow uninterrupted. I reflected on what had happened with Lily. I felt no hatred, only understanding. People like her often don't intend harm in the way we imagine. They act out of their own need for importance, for validation, for connection they cannot form safely. That didn't excuse the impact, but it explained it. And understanding brought closure. One evening, Ethan curled up beside me with a drawing. "Look, Mom," he said, proudly, showing a sketch of our family smiling, sunlight spilling through the windows. I traced my fingers over it, feeling warmth and relief. "You did this?" I asked. "Yeah," he said. "It's how happy feels now." I kissed his forehead. "It looks perfect." From that moment, I realized the most important gift I could give him and myself was the confidence to recognize healthy love, healthy guidance, and healthy boundaries. No one could steal that. Months passed and life unfolded gently. New babysitters came and went, each one respectful, professional, and caring in the right way. I watched Ethan thrive. His laughter was spontaneous, his trust in people deliberate but secure, and I realized something profound. The greatest protection doesn't come from control, it comes from teaching awareness. The echoes of Lily's influence faded with time, leaving behind only lessons. Lessons about vigilance, about understanding intent versus impact, about affirming presence, about safeguarding joy without suffocating it. One afternoon, as Ethan played in the backyard, he called to me, "Mom, I feel really happy today." I smiled and walked over, holding his hand. "I feel happy too," I said. And in that shared moment, I knew we had come full circle. The fear, the doubts, the quiet manipulations, they no longer had power. Happiness wasn't something to protect from others. It was something we recognized, nurtured, and celebrated together. Our home, our lives, our hearts, they were ours again, fully, securely, and nothing, Not words, not whispers, not subtle games could ever steal that back. The story wasn't just about a babysitter. It was about trust, resilience, and the quiet courage it takes to reclaim joy. And in the end, we had done just that. The end.